What do you want to be? This is a question I think we've all struggled with at some point. And when we're younger, we might be able to say something like astronaut or athlete. And then we get a little bit older and we realize our jump shot is not that good and we're actually kind of afraid of heights. So we start considering options like business analyst or information technologist because these are real jobs. But for many of us, that answer turns into, I don't know. I don't know what I want to be. And that's exactly what I struggled with through most of my college experience. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I felt completely lost. And I wasn't sure how I was going to make money in the future, if my parents would think I'm a failure, if other people would think I'm a failure. So I don't want to stand up here like some 26-year-old life guru that has it all figured out now. But I do want to share how I went from being completely lost about this to being able to create kind of the exact perfect job for me that nobody really told me I could do. And, creating my own website and YouTube channel and reaching hundreds of thousands of subscribers and helping millions of people around the world with something I enjoy doing. And it's allowed me to travel and meet all types of people that have become friends and given me cool opportunities like this to speak in this classroom that I once was actually sitting in. So when we start college, we are asked to pick a major. And this is where all my mistakes started. Because this is a very scary thing because it's a commitment. And so first I chose biology because this seemed smart and like it would get me a good job somehow. And actually it was in this very classroom. I used to sit right over there. That's where I failed biology. And so I went back to the career advisors and mistake number 2, then I changed to, not going to the career advisors. But my mistake number 2 was doing the same thing again. I picked information technology. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just picked it just because, something in the STEM field should get me a good job. That's what all my friends and Google says. And so I did that, but the closer and closer I got towards graduation, with about a year left to graduate, I realized that although I had declared my major, I still had made no progress on deciding what I want to do. And so about a year before I graduated, I started realizing that my major and my degree wasn't going to be a magical, redeemable ticket that's just going to figure everything out for you if you just put yourself in the right major and do what people tell you you're supposed to do. So I think we think about this question kind of in the wrong way. And what naturally happened for me was I began to think more about who I actually was and what I liked. So I think rather than asking, what do you want to be, if you're struggling with this, a better question that we might be more equipped to answer is, who are you? Because we all know the things that we like and enjoy, the things that make us laugh, the things that make us cry. They're usually the same thing. And a lot of people might say, well, I don't know who I am. And I think that's not us not knowing who we are, but us not thinking that who we are is good enough to ever make money or be a career or be something that our parents approve of or society. So for me, I realized that ever since I was a kid, that's a picture of me as a kid. I don't know why I'm wearing a sombrero. And but you can see I'm barely turning away from the computer. I was always really into like video and games and software and doing all these things. I think I was playing some sort of video game here, I remember. And I knew all these things about myself. I naturally knew them, but I never looked at them as something that could be a real job or a career or something that could even lead to potentially the right decision. Why was this kid ever majoring in biology, if I was being honest with myself? And so I had this crazy idea that I could maybe take all these things, and maybe by the time I graduate, if I could just be making enough money as I was in my retail job, that I wouldn't have to go get a real job by the time I graduated. I would just kind of see where I was in a year and if I made any progress. And so I did ultimately, now that I decided I did graduate ultimately. And I took that last year and I put myself through my own 4-year degree just by reading things, watching things online. And the fact is, I now, all that energy that I had that was all feeling lost and stirred up, I had something to direct it towards. And it started working, and magically, by the time I graduated, it all seemed to start working, which is that a coincidence? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, there is things like opportunity and timing, and not everyone, we all have responsibilities, and our situations are all different. I'm not saying everyone in here should go start a YouTube channel or start their own business. We all have the different right answer for us. But we can all begin to think about this question a little bit better if we're feeling lost. And so I've kind of thought of some golden rules that I figured out through my struggle and journey through this question that I think might be able to help you look at it in a different perspective and get you on the right track. And number 1 would be to consider what you haven't considered. So it sounds kind of like a paradox. But for me, that was these things that were right in front of me this whole time. I had been making designs and learning all these softwares since I was a kid. I had been sharing stuff online in my free time. All these things I did for fun for years and years and years. But for some reason, it just never occurred to me that maybe I should look into this thing. I was majoring in biology and all these things that I thought sounded right. So for you, that thing might seem so obvious. It might be right in front of you. So you haven't even considered it before because it's so obvious. So just take a moment to consider these different options. And to demonstrate that, we could play a game of tic-tac-toe. So if I would ask all of you guys just for a second to find the winning move here, if you're X. Do you see it? There's the winning move. And if you're like me, you'll probably say, well, you didn't tell me I could do that. But that's how I felt in college when I was looking at all these different majors. Nobody told me I could do that, this thing that was easy and fun and I was passionate about. I kind of had to figure it out. And life is not like a tic-tac-toe game, so thankfully, there is somewhere in your life that you can probably do that. You don't have to be thinking about it in those spaces that are given to you. The second rule that I kind of came up with was to question what you think you know. So kind of the opposite of considering what you don't know. So many times we have these assumptions and these preconceived things about what's good or bad, and what's a good job or what's a real job, and what's a real degree, and what's a waste of time degree. And we think we're so smart, but for a second, we should realize that maybe we're not that smart about everything. There's so many things that we don't know, and especially with the internet and technology, things that your job might not even exist yet, and it might exist in 3-4 years, and you didn't think about that. For me, when I was a kid there in that picture, playing those games and learning all these different softwares and getting internet savvy, YouTube didn't exist yet, Instagram didn't exist yet. All these things that I could one day leverage didn't exist, but it still somehow worked out and all the dots connected. So question what you think you know and stop labeling things as good or bad, because we don't always know what's good or bad. And you don't know something that's bad to you, like maybe you missed a flight and then you got stuck at the airport and then you met someone who changed your life in some way. Just silly stories like this. So missing the flight was bad, but then meeting that person was good. So was it really bad? And we do this all the time in our life. So for example, talking about seeds now again, we have, would you ever imagine that that thing on the left would turn into that thing on the right? We know this to be true, you know, if we've gotten our basic education. So yeah, we can all agree that this happens. But think about all the things in your life right now that might be seeds. Like maybe you just have an interest in playing the guitar, or you have an interest in fashion design or typography or font design. These things sometimes might seem silly to us because they don't look recognizable yet. But with technology and all these things that are out of our knowledge, trusting in that, you could end up finding that thing that turns into something really fruitful for you out of something that you never would have recognized. And that can be a hobby, an interest, a relationship, somewhere you visit or live, or even something like coming to this talk today and coming up and sparking some idea in your head. So stop labeling things as good or bad and try to recognize or understand that there might be seeds that will develop later. And lastly, make the decision to be yourself. So this is simple. It is an easy answer, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do. This still requires work. And this doesn't mean that you can be the potato chip eating, sleep all day version of yourself, because that's what you like to do and that's what I told you to do. But if you start here, then all that energy that you spent feeling lost and didn't know what to do, this can be a great start because you know who you are at the core of it, and deciding to be yourself is the only answer almost, and the simple answer. And that can take many different shapes and forms, and what works for myself or the person next to you might not be what it works for you, but we all go through these same kind of mental roadblocks, I think, that leave us feeling the same way. So rather than struggle with deciding what you want to be, I'd say start by deciding to be yourself and struggle with that. Thank you.